Today I'm going to be answering an extremely important question about the Halloween Gambit. The question that I'm going to answer is, what rating range is it going to be most successful? If you are rated 500, or if you are rated 1,000, or if you're rated 1,500, who's going to have the most success playing the Halloween Gambit? Well, we are about to find out, and the answer might surprise you. Let's take a look. All right, so for those of you who are not aware, this is the starting position of the Halloween Gambit. And I'll show you very quickly how we ended up here. It's e4, e5, white attacks the pawn, black defends the pawn, white brings out the knight, and black brings out the knight. This is extremely common. You will see this a lot. If you play e4 and you play knight f3 to attack the pawn, you're going to see this position a lot. And one of the options that you have is capturing this pawn, which is the Halloween Gambit. Now, it's called a gambit, of course, because you're giving up the knight for the pawn, which doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense. But why are we doing this? The point is we're going to follow up with the move d4. We have both pawns in the center, and on top of that, you're going to get a bunch of tempos chasing these knights around, right? Depending on where this knight moves, you're going to push one of these pawns forward, and you're going to keep kicking the knights around, and you gain a lot of space, and you gain a lot of time. That's the idea, okay? I have a video on the channel. I'll link it below if you want more details on all the different lines. But what we're interested in today is which rating range would be best, would this benefit the most, right? Who should play this? Should the 500 rated players play it? Should the 1,500 rated players play it? Should you stop playing it when you hit a certain level, right? That's what we're going to tackle in this video, okay? So I've broken this down. I have a spreadsheet over here to my right. It has the rating categories of 400, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, 1,800, 2,000, and 2,200 and above. And for each of those categories, I wrote down the success rate or the win rate, not only after capturing the pawn, but I also looked at two of the main lines that occur after that, and then further calculated the win rates from those positions. And the results are rather fascinating. So what I'm going to do is have my editor throw up these one at a time as we go through them, and let's go ahead and get started. So at the 400 rating level, the win rate when you capture on e5 is 48%. Now, that's not very good, okay? We're looking for win rates above 50%. Now, 48 is not terrible, okay? That there's definitely worse openings, but we're really looking for above 50%. If you can get a win rate above 50%, that's a good opening, okay? So 48%, why is it so low? Well, my theory is that the 400 rated players, a lot of them don't know that they're playing the Halloween Gambit. They think they're taking a free pawn, and then they realize, oops, I blundered my knight. The game goes on, but they don't really know what the follow-up should be. I think that's why the win rate is so low. And here's what's interesting. For those 400 rated players who play the correct move of d4, and then when the knight goes back, who again play the correct move of d5, and then when the knight goes here, who again play the correct move of f4, basically just attacking the knight with the pawns, right? If they make it this far, their win rate skyrockets to 59% just by knowing those few moves. Okay, that's pretty good. 59% is very, very good, even at the 400 level, okay? So the other thing is when they play d4, and this is important, you're going to need to understand this for the rest of the video, the knight has really two main options. You go back to c6 or you go back to g6. Now, c6 is definitely the more common one, but sometimes people will decide to put it over here. And when this happens, you don't play d5 because you're not attacking anything anymore. Now you have to play the other pawn to attack the knight like this. And an interesting thing about the knight is if you look carefully, it can't really move forward because you have all of these squares covered. Where does the knight have to go? It has to go back to g8, or there's some other moves that black could play, but most people are going to save their knight and they're going to go back here, okay? And then the best move, or one of the best moves for white, is bishop c4. And if you play this move at the 400 level, the win rate is 54%. Okay, so not as good as the other one, 59, but still 54 is pretty good, all right? So like I said before, what this tells me is at the 400 level, most players who play this don't really know what they're doing. They're probably blundering a piece. But if they can figure out the follow-up of throwing these pawns forward at the right time, they're going to have some very nice games, okay? So there you have it. Let's jump now to the 1,000 rating level. So at the 1,000 rating level, when you capture here on e5, the win rate is 52%. Much better than 48%. And what that tells me is probably by the time you hit 1,000, most of the players who are playing this maybe have some idea of this opening and what the follow-up is, okay? So that's a very big jump. Now, after black captures, if they play d4, the knight goes back, they play d5, and then they play f4. The win rate is again 59%, just like we saw at the 400 range, okay? So that's, again, very, very high win rate. It's hard to find a gambit with a win rate that good, okay? So 59%, very, very good. And on the other line, if the knight goes back to g6, e5, knight g8, and on bishop c4, the win rate for 1,000 is 53%. So not as good, but still definitely playable, and you can't really complain about a 53% win rate, okay? So let's keep going and jump up now to the 1,200 rating range. So at 1,200, knight takes e5 has a 53% win rate. So it's even higher. We've went from 48 to 52, now to 53, right? It's increasing as we're getting higher, which is very interesting to me. Now, I have a theory about this, and you guys can comment below if you think I'm correct or not. But right around 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, that's when players start to get a little better at tactics. They've been exposed to more things. They're pretty good at attacking, right? And this is very much an attacking opening, right? Once you sacrifice that piece, you start throwing these pawns forward, you get to go on the offensive and attack your opponent. And black has to kind of know how to defend. And that's kind of a weird rating range, 12 to 1,400, where it's like, I don't really know how to defend. So that's my theory anyway. So it goes up to 53%. And after d4, knight here, d5 here, and f4, we are looking at, again, 59% win rate. So again, very, very good. And let's go ahead on the knight to g6 line. After e5, the knight goes back and bishop c4. We are looking at, again, 53%. So not much of a change there. All right, let's keep going. 1,400. At the 1,400 rating level, this move has a 54% win rate. So again, it's going up even more. All right, let's keep going. After the main line here of chasing the knight around like this, after d5, f4, we have, wait for it, a 60% win rate. So it's going up even more in this category as well. And then the other one, the knight g6 line, is also going to be 53% when the knight goes back here and you play bishop c4. That's also 53%. Okay, so very interesting stuff. Now let's keep going. 1,600. After knight takes e5, you have a 55% win rate. It continues to go up even at 1,600. This kind of blew my mind when I was going through this. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. But again, it goes back to what I was saying. These higher rated players are actually a little bit better at attacking, and they actually have a lot of tactics in their mind, and I think that really helps, okay? At the 1,600 level, if we follow this main line where the knight goes back here, d5 and then f4, we have a 61% win rate. So even better, the best win rate that we have seen in any category. 1,600 rated players, okay? If you're rated 1,600, remember this opening, Halloween Gambit, okay? Let's keep going. Knight to g6, e5, knight goes back, and bishop c4 at 1,600 rating is again 53%. So that one's pretty consistent across the board so far, 53%. All right, let's keep going and see what happens at 1,800. At the 1,800 rating level, knight takes e5 has a 54% win rate. Now, this is the first point where it starts to drop down a little bit. So we were increasing up to that peak at 1,600, okay? And now 1,800 is 54%. And then if we follow this main line again, d4, attack the knight and play f4, we have a 61% still, even at 1,800. Okay, so I know a lot of people were asking me, can I play this opening if I'm 1,800 or 2,000 or whatever? Absolutely, if you're 1,800, you can play it. This is still fantastic as far as the win rate is concerned, okay? And then if we check the knight g6 line here, e5, knight g8, bishop c4, we have at 1,800, 52%, okay? So this one goes down a little bit, but again, 52% is good. It's more than 50%. That's a positive win rate. I would be happy to play that any day of the week, okay? Let's keep going to the 2,000 rating level, okay? At 2,000, knight takes e5 has a 52% win rate. So again, it drops down from 1,800, okay? So we saw that peak, like I mentioned, at 1,600. It's dropping some more here at 52%. If you follow this main line and get to this position again, 58% win rate at 2,000. So we finally dropped below the 60%. Actually pretty significant, 3% drop when you hit 2,000. And that makes sense because it is actually a slightly better position for black. And at the 2,000 level, that's when players are going to start to be able to defend a little bit better. That being said, 58% is still a good win rate. I mean, I would be happy to play this. And I've actually experienced this playing it at 2400 level, I've been able to win some very nice games with this opening. So even at the high levels, it's still turning out pretty nice. Let's check this one at the 2000 level. After this, we get a win rate of 50%. So not bad, but not as good as the other ones where it was sitting at 53%, right? Okay, and last but not least, let's see what happens above 2200. So 2200 and above, okay? We have a win rate of 50% when you play this. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, that's pretty good. I thought this was going to be much lower than that, but having a 50% win rate is not too bad, okay? And if we follow the main line at the top level here, after this position, the win rate is 52%. So that one does drop significantly. We're not seeing 58, 60% here above 2200. It's 52%. But part of that too is a lot of the higher rated games actually end in draws. And so those draws sort of lower the win rates from any opening. So still 52% is not bad, okay? And then the other one, knight g6, e5, knight goes back, bishop c4, 49% win rate for white above 2200. So looking at the data here, you can see the peak is at 1600. Really, the sweet spot, in my opinion, is kind of from like 14 to 1800. You're going to have the most success with this opening. That being said, you can play it at any rating level and be totally fine. But if you are rated 14 to 1800, you definitely want to check out the Halloween Gambit. Like I said, I have an older video where I went over some more of the theory and the lines. I'll link that below if you want to check that out. Thank you guys for watching. I spent a lot of time putting this together. I hope you learned something. Make sure you hit the like, and I'll see you next time. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.